Hey everybody, welcome in. Andrew Lucio again, Kyle Waple, my co-owner. And today we are going to be talking about why people are playing certain decks and why certain decks aren't being played. So let's get right into it. And we're back, so let's get right into it. Okay, so we left off with Arcane Rising. We talked about all that stuff. We talked about WTR. Let's talk about Monarch, and let's talk about those heroes. And let's just kind of run it down. So I think Bolton's the best place to start. Bolton's the best place to start because Bolton has left, I feel, the most players with some form of PTSD. Literally, the life will drain out of your eyes when Bolton does his specialization, which is Beacon of Hope. Right? Beacon of Hope says, if you're looking at the card on the screen, Beacon of Hope says, for 0, play this card as an attack reaction. And then, from your soul, remove however many cards you want. And the current attack that you're playing it on is going to get +1 for every card you removed in your soul. And then, if that wasn't good enough, go into your deck and find any card that was the cost that you just did or lower, i.e. the number of soul cards you pulled out are lower, so usually you just do 1, and put that card into your hand. Because, that's fair. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to go get his other specialization. You know what that one is?
Lumina.
Oh, God. And you know what this card does? We're going to put that one on the screen. This card says it's Luminary Ascension, right? It's like Luminary Ascension or Luminous Ascension or something like that.
Yeah,
right? Ascendancy,
like
maybe?
Something.
Doesn't matter. You'll see it on the screen. The point is, this card also costs 0. Yeah, that's an overarching theme. This one also costs 0. And this one says, hey, when you play me, all of your weapons can be used an additional time. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to have charged this turn, that is the charge one. If you charged your soul, all your weapons can attack an additional time. The other ability is your weapons get on hit, take a card from the top of the deck, and if it is a light card, charge your soul and heal 1.
It also has +1, right?
Oh yeah, that's on the first part of this card too. Yeah. So you get +1 damage. So you take your swords, because you're going to use swords, because you want to use Courage of Bladehold. We'll get into that in a minute. You take your swords, you give them +1, they go from 2 to 3. The swords themselves say, if your opponent tries to block this with an attack action card, they get a permanent +1 until the end of turn, so then it stacks, so they could get even higher. Yep. And then you're going to run the gold bracers. I can't remember what they're called. But when you crack those, all your weapons get +1 for the turn. So you go from 2 to 3 to 4.
Stubby hammers?
They're not stubby hammers. No, they're not stubby hammers. God no. Stubby hammers is literally for attack action cards. Has nothing to do with weapons.
It's golden something.
It's some kind of golden bracer. Who cares? The point is, when this attack goes off, you crack the Courage of Bladehold, and now your swords cost 0. So they're high damage. You play 2 of these bad boys. You play 2 luminaries. That's how it goes. You don't even activate the combo until you can play 2 in the same time. So now, when you swing, 9 times out of 10, you're swinging on the chain, and what's happening is you've already gotten a +1 from playing out these 2 luminaries. So now you're 2 to 4. You got the +1 from the bracers. Now you're at 5. If your opponent blocks with an attack action card because you charged this turn during this chain or whatever, Bolton's ability, his hero ability is online, and it says that if you charged, then your attacks, they get +1 whenever your opponent blocks with an attack action card. Mm-hmm. And then he has a second ability on the hero card. He has a second ability, and the second ability says, if the damage of this attack has been modified, if it's higher than the base, even by +1, as an attack reaction, you can remove a card from your soul and give it go again.
Yep.
So now we've played 2. We've charged before we played the 2. We did everything that we were supposed to do. And if we were really, really good, we started our attack sequence with a V of the Vanguard. So that's also giving us a +1 across the attack chain. Well, actually, no, we broke the chain when we played the Luminaries. So don't even worry about that. But the point is, now you can do 6 attacks at 5 damage apiece base. That's 30 damage. 30. And every time they swing and they do even 1 point of damage, they're going to take a card off the top for each luminary trigger.
Yep. And if it's light, it goes in the soul.
And they heal 1.
Heal 1.
So potential to heal another 12.
Yep. And
So-
if you block more, it
Yeah.
keeps increasing.
And it keeps increasing the damage permanently with attack action cards if you're blocking with against these Centauri Sabers. Go ahead and put that down too. Centauri Sabers. But the deal is, it's so good. It looks very attractive. It's super sexy. Everything about Bolton feels great. However, why aren't people playing?
I think it took a minute to actually discover all of that. I don't feel like people knew at the beginning that Bolton was that explosive. And so at the beginning, it just seemed really boring. It was like, because you have to pitch a card and then play a card and then charge a card. He has a 3-card commitment. He feels really awkward.
Yep.
Certain turns you just block out. And when we finally found this, I feel like it was right about Road to National season. It started blowing up in Europe.
Around September.
And then everyone was already like locked in.
Yeah.
It was just too much. Now I feel like he's there, but then like Ice Heroes came out, and now they can slow it down, and so now there's all these little fears.
So absolutely 100%. I feel the reason people they play him for a little bit and then they stop playing him because of the fact that everything he's trying to do is so hand intensive and very conditional. You have to get this combo off to really dominate the game. If you didn't have this combo, if you didn't have this big dynamic combo, the deck would never be played. It's just too hand intensive and it doesn't do enough. All right, so let's go ahead and move to Prism. Why is Prism so attractive other than her art? Why is she so attractive to new players?
She is very easy from a like starting standpoint, and her damage is so explosive. You literally get to put a card down, and then as long as you pitch a yellow card and your weapon is Luminaris, all of your attacks go again. And then all of your swings are overstated because you have the Phantasm keyword.
Now, she has 1 specialization, right? She has 2. So first specialization she has?
Is Erudition.
Okay. And Erudition, amazing card. When you're looking at Erudition, you pay 2. If you got a yellow pitch, because you're going to be using Luminaris, there's no reason not to. So if you got a yellow pitch with Luminaris as your weapon in your pitch zone, which, yellow, it pitches for 2, right? Seems kind of good. It's all synergistic. This card comes across, it's a 5 damage dominate. It does have Phantasm, so you can pop it if you happen to have a 6 or higher in your hand at the moment when it's played. But if it hits, what do you get to do?
You get to put the card in your soul and then draw 2 cards.
Oh, God. So now your soul is charged. Your vestige is online. So anything you pitch that's light pitches for 1 additional resource. Now your other specialization, is it as sexy as that one?
It used to be the only reason we could compete with Chain, but we have Arclight Sentinel, which it's one of our auras, which is another big reason you actually play Prism, is because you have like access to these really cool auras that all come into play, and they don't get removed unless your opponent attacks them. And then when they attack them, if they don't have more than 1 action point, their turn ends. But Arclight Sentinel comes down and it says, you have to attack me.
Absolutely.
You don't get a choice. And when you declare your attack on it, 9 times out of 10, your turn's going to end.
Now, a lot of these auras present the same kind of attractiveness that Kano did, is the fact that you can play these on your opponent's turn. You can play them in response to abilities and triggers and anything that uses the chain in all of the game. Anytime that you present these type of instant effects, they look very attractive to new players. Why aren't people playing Prism?
People always play Prism. It looks good, but I feel Prism really struggles with aggro. And right now aggro is just very popular. I think that's her biggest downside.
Prism has a huge chunk of the field, though. I would say the reason that people aren't playing, I would say the reason we're not seeing 162 Prisms is because there are very subtle aspects of the deck that are so good and so niche that the secondary market cost on those cards is a little intimidating to newer players. And I think that's the reason why we don't see more prisms. Would you agree with that?
Like footsteps and stuff?
All that. Yeah.
I get that.
There's a high barrier. There's a high cost barrier for entry with Prism that makes Prism not as attainable as some of the other heroes, and I think that's the real deterrent. And if that wasn't there, I think we would see more. I think we definitely see more. All right, so let's talk about Chain.
Oh, gosh.
Let's talk about Chain. Let's talk about free go again. Chain's hero ability. If you're looking at Chain, Chain says, "Hey, would you like some go again? Action. Create a soul shackle. Boom. Put the soul shackle down. Now, any shadow, any rune blade action that you do right now, go again." That feels kind of nice.
Pretty good.
Doesn't it feel pretty good? Feels kind of nice. Okay, so when we look at something like that, anytime you present me a player, and especially a new player, with the ability to attack and then maybe attack a third time, that's very attractive. So without even talking about the paltry specializations that Chain got, that right there on its own was enough to really just hurdle this hero into the spotlight. 2 specializations. The first one is not the. Is it Doomsday? Is Doomsday? No. Doomsday was Levi's.
Levi's. He gets.
He gets the other one.
He gets
Eclipse. So, Eclipse says if you've played 6 or more.
Yep. Blood
Okay.
debt.
6 or more Blood Debt cards, which, remember, we talked about those shackles. The shackles at the beginning of your turn are going to take the top card of your deck, and they're going to put it into your banish zone. And when it does that, those are cards with Blood Debt that you can potentially play, right? So now Eclipse, the shackles, there's a lot of synergy there, right? Okay, so we get to a point where we have enough Blood Debt, we play those cards, we play Eclipse, and then what does Eclipse give us?
Eclipse is a shadow. I think it's his Ursa, right? And
Yeah.
he is
An ally.
He's an ally. He's a 6/6 ally. He deals. He's just in a free 0 cost 6 damage swing every turn if you want.
Yep.
Goes 6 damage. And the only way your opponent can get rid of him is if they can deal 6 damage back at him.
They have to attack it with 6. And that's a little bit of a resource commitment. And to have a 0 cost shadow attack that you can give go again with your shackle feels kind of nice. Feels kind of nice. And then the other specialization we got is actually pretty good too, but we can only run one of it. And that's kind of like, and the same thing with Eclipse, we can only run one of it. So these heroes, I think they felt that they had a lot of go again, so they'd be pretty strong, so they wanted to limit their specializations, which probably rightfully so. But the other specialization is, I can't remember what the name of the card
Soul
is.
Reaping?
Soul Reaping, exactly. So I take this card, it costs a lot, but it doesn't matter how much it costs, because I can just take a card and put it into my banish zone, and I can do more. I can banish more cards. So like this is a good Eclipse trigger card if I really need to get 6 cards to play Blood Debt. Because I can take this card and I can do more cards, and then every card that I banish in order to play this card for free gives me a resource. And that feels kind of nice too.
Yep.
So there's a really good, all of these elements say, hey, get Eclipse out and keep it out and do really good things with it. And it's a 6 damage attack. And because of the fact that it is a shadow card, Runeblade card, whatever, the shackle is going to give it go again if you want it to give it go again, which you will. It feels good. It feels nice. It all synergizes. It's really, really, really well developed. Why aren't people playing it?
They were playing it way too much, and we had to hit it with a list. I think Chain's definitely picked up. I think another like really cool thing to sell on like the light and the shadow heroes are just like when you're given this extra tag, so you're not just a rune blade, you're a shadow rune blade. It's almost like any card they make that says shadow rune blade is basically a Chain specialization. Because like if they do ever go back and make more rune blades, which they have, who's to say it'll be a shadow rune blade?
That's
or
true.
if they make another illusionist, who's to say it's going to be a light illusionist?
True.
So there's a lot of like unique identity for them.
We could definitely do a shadow illusionist or an elemental illusionist.
Yeah, and that you could change it
Or
up.
just
but that,
pure illusionist.
But that's what makes the light illusionist cards like Prism specific, right?
Yeah, that's true. Without being too specific that we can't go back and do the light illusionist.
Oh, if we want to.
Of course.
Absolutely.
All right, so I agree with that, and I think that after the ban with Seeds of Agony, I really feel like a lot of people moved away from the deck because they felt it wasn't as consistent. They want to do a lot of aggro, but they can be more consistent with other aggro decks, and they don't have to worry about the back end of accidentally banishing cards that they need to win. And that's really kind of the deterrent. And I think that's a very good mechanic or a good deterrent that you can build into it, which moves us right into Levia. So Levia to me has a very boring ability. All her hero ability does, if you're looking at her hero card, if you banish a 6, it turns off the Blood Dead. That's all it does. It literally does nothing else. And what else is she trying to do? She's trying to do brute things, just not as well. And she's trying to go wide like Chain, but just not as well.
Without a free go again option.
I mean, like we'll take a look at her specializations, right? Like her specializations are Doomsday, which says all you have to do is have 6 Blood Debt cards. If you just have 6 Blood Debt cards, you don't have to play them. You just got to have them in your banish zone. You can play Doomsday, and you can bring out Blasphemous, and then it's just like Ursa. It's a 6. You can do things with it. But unlike Ursa, you're not in a deck where you can give it free go again. So it's like literally just a 6 on the board. Excuse me. And then you have her other specialization, which is kind of nice to have because it's a blue card. So it pitches for 3 resources. It blocks for 3. And it's a 6. So when you're looking at Blood Rush Bellow and you're looking at other effects where she needs to banish cards from her graveyard that are 6 or more, all those things feel really good, but the actual card doesn't really threaten your opponent. It's not like if it hits, they have to discard 2 cards, or if it hits, they get 1 action a turn, like with Red in the Ledger. It doesn't really do much of anything else other than that. It's just a 6. It can reduce in cost. Again, that doesn't really do anything for us except to help us go a little bit wider, which is what she's trying to do. And she can use things like Shadow Puppetry, which if you don't know what Shadow Puppetry is, it's 0 cost. You play it on the board. It gives any attack +1 and go again. And then if it hits, you can look at the top card and you can banish it if you want or not, which is a really good card. Anything that's 0 and give this thing go again is actually pretty good. Yep. That's why Captain's Call is so good right now. We'll save that for later. But anyways, long story short, with all these things being said, the fact that she has scab skins and the fact that she can use gambler's gloves and all this other stuff, why aren't people playing Levia?
It's like brute without the intimidate. It's just, you might get 2 swings off a little more consistently than brute, but like that's it. Really, it just doesn't feel that good.
Boring. That's it. I don't really know anything else. It's boring with the detriment of potentially dying to Blood Debt.
No, you can turn that off.
Sometimes.
That's her one ability.
Sometimes.
That's her, yeah.
If you can't banish, I literally have played against several Levias where I'm looking at how much Blood Debt they have, and I'm thinking in my head like, I'm going to force you to block, and then you're not going to have 6s in hand to banish. So you're going to die next turn. So instead of waiting for a bigger setup turn, I just push across with 9-10 damage. And now you have to block. And now you don't have those cards you need just off the Blood Debt. And then you take 8 damage from Blood Debt and you die. That feels bad. So that's why I think people aren't playing her. It's because she's a little bit boring, and the fact that is that she sometimes dies to her own Blood Debt, and that feels bad too. And then if you're building her any other way, then you might as well play another character. Yep. It really comes down to it. Okay, so Tales of Aria, newest set. We're going to start with Lexi. I think Lexi's a great place to start. Lexi has a lot of things going for her, and she does a lot of things that are very unique. And her first ability, right on her hero card, if you're looking at her hero card, you flip the card that's in your arsenal face up. If it's an ice card, give your opponent a frostbite. Well, that's kind of nice, a little board state tax. If you want to try to play some things on my turn or your turn, the cost is going to be increased by 1, feels good. Yep. Or if it's a lightning card, anything I play is going to have go again, attack-wise. Any attack.
Any attack.
Any attack. No. Attack.
Oh, is it attack?
Because there's weapons too.
Gotcha.
Obviously, we are not using a weapon, but there is a world where someone builds Lexi with Talishar.
Sure.
Right? And I reveal a lightning card, and now this one cost 4 damage sword has go again. It can only swing 3 times, so like at the most damage it can output is 12, right? But the point is, this one cost 4 damage sword will have go again if I reveal a lightning card, because it says any attack. So there is a world where someone's building Lightning Lexi Talishar and just doing a bunch of attacks with no arrows. It could exist. It could exist.
Sure.
Think about it.
I did.
No, you didn't. You've never thought about it. You've never thought about it once. All right, so that's a really cool hero ability, right? So let's look at her specializations. What's attractive about this? Well, she has, the first one's an arrow, and it's lighted up.
Yes.
Yeah. So lighted up says, hey, if I hit, I'm going to deal an additional damage for every piece of equipment that my opponent has. So like, let's say I was hitting Old Man, and I'm hitting Old Man. He's got 4 pieces of armor. He's got the shield. That's an extra 5 damage. If any damage goes through. So like if I deal 1, here's an extra 5. Boom. 6 damage. That feels kind of nice. And then, did she get another specialization?
I think every Arya character is down to 1.
Down to 1, right?
I think they have 1, and then technically they have like their one of their
the pulsos.
Yeah, the pulse.
So we got Volthaven, Candlehold, and I can't remember what the third one is.
Eisenloft, Eisenhold. I don't know. It's some weird. It's the snow place.
Eisenloft or whatever.
Yeah.
So, anyways, long story short, she's a ranger, and a lot of the things that she wants to do, she has to do from the arsenal. So we're all the way back to the same thing that we said about Azalea. But let's go ahead and go through it. Why aren't people playing Lexi?
Honestly, it sucks having the need to draw an arrow every time you swing is a lot. And she even gets a bow that lets her do it twice, and sometimes it works, and you feel great. And then other times it doesn't work, and you're like, why am I playing a ranger class?
She has a card, which all rangers have, and it's called 3 of a kind. You pay 1, you draw 3 cards. So the problem with 3 of a kind is that it says, well, now you can only play any card. Any card. Instances, non-attack actions, doesn't matter. Any card you want to play, you can only play from the arsenal. And that can potentially bite you in the butt. And that feels bad too. So we come back into the same thing where it's like, do I want to take an extra step and potentially not be able to play the game? Or do I just want to play this other hero and just play things from my hand all the time? You shrug your shoulders because, like, what else can you say? You know, I love Ranger. I think Ranger's great, and it's so thematic and it feels so good, but we just don't have the ability to do the things that a lot of other decks do. We can do some really cool stuff, but we just can't do it as effectively, and I think that's why we don't see 162 Lexis when we go out to tournament. Now, we'll move from Lexi, and we'll go right into Oldham. I want to save that boogeyman for last. But Oldham, okay? Oldham's hero ability was cataclysmic for the community because it's the first hero ability that's a defense reaction. So when we saw Oldham, the fact that ice was going to be a thing, frostbite, and we knew what frostbite was, and the fact that the defense reaction is there, and the fact that he gets a shield, so attractive. Probably the first time we looked at any hero and said, hey, we've got a control hero, an actual control hero. Stop all your damage, stop your ability to effectively play your turn, do really big swings on setup turns. I mean, Oldham has it all. And then on top of everything I just said, Winter's Wail feels really good. Specialization, Oakenold. This specialization is a 3-cost, reveal an earth, reveal an ice. I get +2 damage, I get dominate, and if I happen to hit you, not crush-wise, not 4, just 1. If I hit you with 1 point of damage, take 2 random cards from your hand, put them at the bottom. Feels extremely good. Why are people playing? Yeah, see that deep sigh?
So many people were playing him when he came out. It was super exciting. He has literally all the tools you could need to be exciting.
Yes.
You were given the shield, you were given the hammer, you had a cool ability, you had a cool hero, we gave him some unique cards. I think every Arya character getting to play of these 2 elements is unique. It makes you want to look at it, and so he's the only Ice Earth hero. So you get to mix these 2 cards together. I think that Earth pool is boring. I think that Earth pool of cards is just boring, and then so you're definitely looking at the ice.
Absolutely.
And it's fun, but it's just control's not enough. In a 50-minute time, I feel like when you actually stall it out, time's to your detriment more than anything else. And it's just a lot of thinking. It's a lot of sequencing. It's a lot of just everything you have to do.
I don't disagree with any of that, and I feel like what it really comes down to is what you said about time. There's just not enough time to play Old Man. There just isn't enough time. You're always running out of time, especially when you're a new player, and so you get 1 or 2 draws, and it completely disincentivizes you from playing. Now, obviously, there's the old Guardian heads out there. I know Nambo is going to be like, oh, I don't care. I love this. I play fast. Wyatt McCaffrey, I play fast. Jack McCaffrey, I play fast. And the guy that literally just recently won, he put out a Reddit with 5 points, and his 5th point was play faster. So, yes, people will play Oldham. But the reason they're not 162 people playing Oldham is because of that fact. You just go to time, and it feels bad. Now, last hero, Briar, the boogeyman. Briar's ability as it currently stands. If you're looking at the hero card, play a non-attack action, play a non-attack action, gain an embodiment of lightning. What does embodiment of lightning say? If you play an attack action card, break embodiment of lightning, that card, that attack, gains go again. How easy is it to play 2 non-attack action cards?
I think it's really simple, especially because they're all free.
All right. Now, you're going to try, with that kind of mentality, to go as wide as possible when you're attacking with attack action cards. And when you see this hero card, there's a second ability that you don't even have to worry about. And there's no real active participation with this second ability. And you know what the second ability says? If any attack deals damage, we're not talking about a hit, which is after damage calculation. We're just talking about damage. And we're not talking about any specified damage. So that means it opens the door for all damage. So that means arcane damage, that means regular power damage. It doesn't matter what type of damage. If any attack deals damage, for every point of damage, every source, for each source of damage, individual source of damage, you're going to get 1 embodiment of Earth token. And what does this token say? It says, when you defend with a non-attack action card, that non-attack action card gets an amount of defense increased by the number of embodiment of Earth tokens that you have. So let's play this out for you. We're not even going to go into her specialization. We're just going to immediately talk about what's so attractive. Non-attack, embodiment of lightning. 0 cost 4 that has no go again. 0 cost 4 or 3 with go again. 0 cost 4 or 3 with go again. And as I'm doing each of these attacks, if any of them deal damage, I'm building up these embodiment of Earth tokens. And usually those first 2 non-attacks are going to be something that gives me a card draw, gives me a lot of bonus damage, or potentially with Sting of Sorcery. If you don't know what Sting of Sorcery is a 0 cost Runeblade card that says every time you attack with an attack action card, boom, that card gains deal 1 arcane to your opponent. And since the card has it, and the card is dealing the arcane damage, embodiment of Earth tokens are being made. And with all that being said, all of these things are going across the board and they're trying to do what they can. And the average amount of damage that's being done is 12 to 15 all the time. And sometimes on 3 cards. No arsenal. You had to pitch a card. Maybe someone made you discard it, whatever the case may be. 3 cards in hand. 12, 15 damage.
It's crazy.
It is crazy, right? Now, why is everybody playing this deck?
It's too efficient. It's just...
Explain to the folks at home what you mean when you say efficient and why other decks aren't as efficient.
Well, you see, with other decks in the game, you actually have to, pitch to play a card, right?
Oh, they have cost.
Yeah, they have cost, right?
Oh,
you actually
okay.
have
Sure.
to do that. You see, with Briar, we play 0 cost non-attack action, 0 cost non-attack action, get an embodiment, and then swing an attack that costs 0 for 4. And then these other 2 non-attack actions we played probably buffed it maybe 4 or 5 damage. And then when this attack goes through, if it hits, we're going to get the embodiment of Earth.
Without trying.
We're going to draw a card. Maybe we'll draw a card there. There's so many different directions it could all go. But at the end of the day, we're just going to follow it up with another attack. Or we'll use the sword swing to go 2 and 2. And if we had another attack that went go again, it gets to squeeze right in between those 2 attacks.
Now, the reason we don't mention Briar's specialization, which I believe is Blossoming... It's Blossoming something. I can't remember what the name of the card
Spellblade.
is. I think it's Blossoming Spellblade. And that card is great. And it's very attractive. It looks really good. Like, when you look at it, just thinking about theory crafting of it, it's a 2 cost, 6 damage attack, blocks for 3. If you fuse it with with lightning and earth, then it will deal 1 arcane damage on its swing. And then anytime, and it has an ability, anytime it deals damage, just anytime it deals damage, this attack will allow you to go into your graveyard, grab a non-attack action, and play it at instant speed. Any non-attack action, doesn't matter. Any non-attack action, just grab it, play it at instant speed. So that feels really, really good, and it looks attractive, but in practice, we don't need that card, so throw it over there. We have all these zero-cost cards, and we're going to be hyper efficient with the deck. We had 162 Briars at Nationals.
Yeah, big number. Over 25% of the tournament.
That's a huge number. That's an insanely huge number. And the reason that this deck is even as scary as it is because no matter who you are, how long you've been playing the game, when you pick up a deck that you've never played before, you're a novice. That's just how it goes. So, best Prism player on the planet picks up a Rhinar deck, never played Rhinar, you're a novice Rhinar. That's just how it is. Get 10 games in, maybe you're intermediate because you already had such good sequencing skills. Get in 100 games, you might be a master. And maybe if you get in 100 plus games, maybe you're the best Rhinar player on the planet. But the point is, when you pick it up that first time, you're just a novice. So we had, of that field, of that 162, I would say there was probably 32 intermediate or better and 130 novice. And a novice is able to pick this deck up, and as long as they know how to play the game, which they did, and as long as they know how to sequence, which they do, this deck will allow them to play against someone on their chosen deck, let's say best Prism player on the planet, and if that player doesn't play 100% perfectly, they lose. If that novice player misses 1 or 2 triggers, doesn't block when they should block, and takes damage that they shouldn't take, they can still win if the other person doesn't play perfectly. Now that's an issue. That's what creates a tier 0 meta. Because, again, we go back over all the things. The whole purpose of this video was for you to understand at a fundamental level why that hero is attractive and why people aren't playing it. Because this hero is very attractive because it gets you wins. And people are playing it. Everybody's playing it. A huge portion of the field is playing it. And why wouldn't they play it? Because they want to win. So when you go to an armory event and you really want that cold foil hero, you're going to play something that gives you the best opportunity to win that card. And that will hurt your locals. We've been in a lot of trading card games. We've seen a lot of tier 0 metas. It kills communities. It bleeds them out. And you see people who already had a high barrier of entry as far as cost goes, they're the first ones to go because they're not going to reinvest what little money they have into a new hero. The second people to go are the people who love their decks. They're actually thematically tied to some particular character or some particular theme deck, and they're the second people to go. And then the final people to go are the core people, the people that actually make up your competitive local because they're done with the meta. And then when they're gone, the whole thing falls apart. And that's where we're at right now. We're in a non-competitive part of the season. We're in our off season. And this is the time to address this before it gets too out of control. What are your closing thoughts?
Let's hit Briar.
Nothing else? Come on, talk about the generics, talk about the future, talk about all the things we talked about.
I mean, it's like,
lay it out.
It's all theory. It's all theory. Like generics. Briar's ability to just abuse so many different generic cards,
yeah,
and just not play any of the elemental cards because you just don't need to.
Yeah,
it's just that's not what Briar should be.
Absolutely.
And it's like all of these cards from like Plunder Run to Snatch to anything you're like abusing to this degree, and it's like what would Briar be? Like even if we just called this Lightning Briar, I think the only lightning cards we're playing are like Red Lunging Press, Ball Lightning. Should we even play anything else? We're not even playing like Electrify because it costs 1 and that's not efficient enough. It has to cost 0.
Yep.
And Electrify's a good card.
It is.
And it's just frustrating. It's nothing about it is exciting. Like Tales of Aria, all these elemental cards, and it's just like let's just take Briar and throw a bunch of boring generic non-attack actions.
If anyone's watching that is associated with LSS that can get with Alan Hale or can get with anyone that's on that team, even James White, whatever the case may be, the easiest fix would be to change the tokens. They'd be cheap to produce, errata tokens. You could just really put them into a supplemental set, or you could put them into the next set as a foil version, whatever the case may be with a new errata. And you can also just put something out and say, hey, here's a little box. We're sending it to the LGSs. It's super cheap to produce. I've worked for companies. I've been in professional game design. I've worked for companies, and I know how much a 500 card sheet costs. And literally, we could produce a bunch of these tokens, and then ship them out to the current stores, 50 to each store. Hand them out to your players so they have one with the errata on it. And here's what it is. And this is going to take lightning, and it's going to take earth. It's very simple. And chain is the blueprint for it. And it's only fair that these tokens only affect Runeblade and Elemental cards, just like chain only affects Runeblade and Shadow cards. And that fixes everything. That fixes everything. If the only non-attacks to get buffed by Earth are Runeblade and Elemental, changes things. If the only ones that get go again are Runeblade or Elemental, it changes things. Now, I'm not saying that we don't still need to ban cards, because I agree with Kyle to an extent that we're getting into portions of the gameplay where the character library and the card library is so huge, and because we're eternal format, that we need to start thinking about future proofing and opening up design space for the developers and for the designers that allows them to create very cool class cards that are not just copies of generics that are floating around, and contain more powerful elements into class-specific design spaces, like what they did with outdoing generics. They did elemental cards, which basically are generic cards, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not against banning cards, but I just think that we need to definitely address the Briar issue. It is an issue. And what makes it an issue is the high degree of efficiency, because it applies to everything and not just Runeblade and Elemental cards, which is completely unfair in design aspect and scope, and completely power creeps out older heroes, which we shouldn't be doing at all. We should always be doing something to make sure that these older heroes are cool and they stay around and they're still relevant, and these supplemental sets are great for that, and I think that's definitely where we should keep going. And, I'll be the first person to say that LSS has done an amazing job at designing everything, and everything feels really good. But I think it feels bad for a designer when they make all these cards that just don't even get looked at because of the fact that the abilities work with any card. So why would I look at these cards that are not as good as these other cards that are generics, or they from other sets? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think to the designer, to the developer, if you hear this and if you're watching this, I want you to feel rewarded for the cards that you designed. I want you to feel good about Invigorate. I want you to feel good about these other elemental options and other Runeblade options that you created. And I want them to be more relevant in the deck space and not pushed out immediately, because these effects will only, they'll work with everything. So, anything else to add?
That does it.
All right, guys. I hope this was informative. I hope you learned something from it. We'll be back soon with some other stuff. I don't know exactly what we'll come back with, but we're definitely going to be back. So take care.